bu suguo, buiti binafi, buiti rabangwayu, buiti gunyo. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hola, buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Seremeng, thanks, gracias for watching and listening. This is Teofilo Colon Jr., a.k.a. Teofilo Campeon, or Teoteo of beinggarifuna.com. I would normally continue in the Garifuna English and Spanish languages, but since the speech featured in this video is in English, I'll continue in the English language. The speech is by intellectual, author, founder of the Harvest Institute think tank, political strategist, economist, real estate developer, economic development consultant, and businessman, Dr. CLAUD Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of 5 books. The first is called Black Labor, White Wealth, The Search for Power and Economic Justice, and it was published in 1994. The second book is called Dirty Little Secrets About Black History, Its Heroes, and Other Troublemakers, which was published in 1997. His third book is called Powernomics, The National Plan to Empower Black America. Dr. CLAUD Anderson's fourth book was entitled, it's a little bit of a sequel, it's called More Dirty Little Secrets About Black History, Its Heroes, and Other Troublemakers, Volume 2. And that book was published in 2006. And finally, his fifth and most recent publication is called A Black History Reader, Questions You Never Thought to Ask. It is published in 2014 and should be available by the time you listen or watch this video. You can go to his website, which I'll put the link up as I'm speaking on the screen that you can go to, and I'll also leave the link in the description below. And you can go to those, he has 2 websites, and you can get further information about those publications. He also has DVDs and other items available for sale. The books that I mentioned contain many provocative ideas that in principle should be of interest to Garifuna people. In thinking about the issues and the concerns of the Garifuna people, certain parallels can be made between the plight of Black Americans and that of the Garifuna ethnic group. For those who do not know, the Garifuna people are Africans who mixed with Carib Indians and Arawak Indians on St. Vincent Island in the Caribbean. After being defeated in war by the British in 1796, they were exiled from their homeland to Roatan Island. Roatan is a small island off the coast of the country of Honduras in Central America, and this exile took place 1 year later after losing in war to the British in 1797. After petitioning the Spanish government, many Garifuna people were allowed to move from Roatan to the mainland of Honduras, namely the port city of Trujillo, upon finding much of Roatan unlivable at the time. Eventually, the Garifuna people migrated across the North Caribbean coast of Honduras, settling many towns and villages along the way. They also migrated to the neighboring countries of Guatemala, Belize, which was then known as British Honduras, and Nicaragua, all in Central America, where many can be found today. In fact, it's where most Garifuna people can be found today. There's no record of the Garifuna people ever being enslaved, despite slavery existing on St. Vincent Island in the 1700s. The Garifuna people were treated as a sovereign nation, so to speak, and a distinct group of people, helping make them unique amongst blacks in the Americas. In fact, they were initially referred to by the British as the Black Caribs. Despite this, many Garifunas were or are at the bottom of society, socially and economically, in countries like Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. In fact, many of the countries in Central America are among the poorest in the Western Hemisphere. And as you can probably imagine, blacks overall, and Garifunas in particular, you can find at the bottom of the societies there. In Belize, many Garifunas have risen to upper levels in society. They're teachers there, they are in the military, so on and so forth. But overall, Garifunas remain ostracized and marginalized in Central America, both economically and socially. I've often wondered, why is this the case for blacks in the Americas? And it's here where Dr. Claude Anderson's writings and speeches offer some sort of explanation. Dr. Claude Anderson's focus is on slavery and how it shaped the course of the destiny of black Americans. He helps to clarify the past so that blacks can better understand how the current mess we are in came to be, and finally illuminate a path to a more desirable future. Dr. Claude Anderson has examined how black Americans have almost become a permanent underclass, a people who have no wealth, who own nothing, and are powerless. Sound familiar? Just like black Americans can learn from Garifuna resistance to British colonial rule in a historical sense, Garifuna people can learn from Dr. Claude Anderson's hard and honest explanations and sharing of the strategies and techniques that can be used to build and solidify power and wealth in a capitalistic society. Dr. Claude Anderson's writings and speeches also offer a reminder of the beauty and the humanity that remains amongst black Americans, despite a vicious and planned social, cultural, and economic contest to exterminate them from existence, which has taken place over the course of hundreds of years. And without further ado, here is the speech by Dr. Claude Anderson.
Our problems are structural. I want to make sure you understand that. And I'm going to try to go through this as quick as I can and show you how it structurally relates to everything from politics and economics to education and social. So you won't have any misgivings when you leave here about what you ought to be doing. And so before I get into it, I want you to understand also that all my books, like Dirty Little Secrets 1 and Dirty Little Secrets 2, I wrote those to tell black folk in thousands and thousands of little stories and episodes why you are very special people, that you walk on sacred ground, paid for by the blood and sweat and tears of millions of black cotton pickers and dishwashers and janitors. You are not a guest in America. The rest of the people are guests in America. You're not a guest. But you're being treated like a guest because you display inappropriate behavior every day the Lord sends to the earth. You are special people. And when the United States started bragging about we're the nation of exceptionality, they should say wrong. Black people are the exceptional people in this country. You're the only non-immigrants in this country. They started talking, this is an immigrant nation. Blacks are not immigrants.
That's right.
You're the only non-immigrants. Indians are not native people. They came across the Bering Straits about 6,000 years ago from China. Black people are the only non-immigrants in America. You're the only people that got a history of being enslaved. You're the only people that got a history of being Jim Crow segregated. You're the only people now that's being benign neglected, which I'm going to be talking about. You're the only people a victim of what we call being politically correct. So we're going to get into it this morning. I'll let you know that in advance. And every one of my books, I only brought 30 books back there to get into some of these issues for you. And I want you to go back in when you get a chance to buy them. Anybody who walks out don't have a book, I'm black, I carry a knife, you're going to get cut.
Come on, Doc.
Let me take off my jacket and start smoking.
Come on, Doc.
Now, the first thing we get you to understand is, because right now, we are not progressing in America. In proportional comparative terms, we are exactly where we were in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. You have not moved not one iota in 150 years. And I'm sick and tired of hearing blacks every other year in Black History Month brag about how far we've come. We are the only people that go backwards and come forward at the same time. We are not progressing in America. As an example, in the 1860s, at that particular time, we had about 287,000 black folk that were so were quasi-free out of almost 5 million. And those 287,000 black folk had successfully acquired one half of 1% of the wealth in the richest nation on earth. And here you are, 150 years later. Guess what you're still controlling on? 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth.
Right.
The average white person in America has 3,500 times more wealth than the average black person has. Why are these civil rights leaders keep telling me about we can compete, we're moving on up? I got 2 white men in America that got more wealth than all 42 million black folk put together. How in the world can you compete owning nothing? Compete with what? Compete with what? You need to start getting people to understand this. They can talk, wow, black folk can do this. You can't do anything. You don't own and control anything. We are 0 producers and 100% consumers. We are vulnerable. You got groups around this world now. That's what all this turmoil in the Middle East and around this country is about. You got to understand what it's about. It's about globalization, integration, and also what we call extermination. You got groups, what is called the Beckenbauer Group, or the Trilateral Commission, or the Council of 300, or the Illuminatis. They are talking about exterminating the non-producers on this earth. They're going to plan on wiping you out. The non-producers. Nobody is more non-producer than black folk.
Right.
That's why you see all this thing about all the germs and diseases cropping up in Africa. You think that's accidental. Statistics shows us through research that by the year 2020, there's a large possibility that almost 50% of all the black people on earth in Africa, Caribbean, and America, you're going to disappear. You're going to disappear as either a direct or an indirect result of man-made catastrophes or natural disasters. Because you're totally ill-equipped to look out for yourselves.
That's right.
You haven't got a pot or a window to throw it out of. The 4 things you must control, and I started getting into economics in a few minutes. To be able to survive and compete on this earth, you must at least dominate and control at least 4 things. You must have control over water, food, energy, and medicine. You don't control any of those things. You're sitting here every day in Philadelphia, depending on other people to feed and clothe you, and going around the country bragging about how far you've come. I have never heard of insanity like that in my life. You can't even wake up in the morning without going to somebody else's store to get food, get gas.
Come on, people.
You don't produce anything. So when I start talking about economic development in a few minutes, you better learn how to own and control. Forget all this other crap you hear about social integration and talking about civil rights. Those are the worst things that could possibly happen to you. There is no power in social integration. That is a negative. That's a negative. Why is social integration negative? Because it is divisive. It divides you. You're living in a world that's based on teamism. Whether you like it or not, God has arbitrarily sent each and every one of you to this earth and arbitrarily assigned you a skin color. You're on a skin color team. Every animal, every insect, and every fowl plays as a team, except black folk. We're the only people who don't want to play as a team, and the reason that's devastating, because on this earth, racism is a team sport. Economic building wealth is a team sport.
Go ahead.
Playing politics is a team sport.
Yes, sir.
Why in the world are you dividing yourselves up talking about, I'm going to go social integrate? For what? We had more as black folk before social integration came you got today. You keep on integrating, you integrate yourself right off the face of the earth. Because you're not playing as a team. My people in America, I haven't gotten into my lecture yet. I'm trying to lay a context for you.
All right, we understand.
So you won't be too angry by the time I finish up. You got to understand on this earth that if you don't own any wealth and power, you're obsolete. And black folk now, if you don't play as a team, you lose by default. You remind me very much of the wildebeest of Africa. Now the wildebeest of Africa look almost like a buffalo or a deer that marches across Africa routinely, annually, from one side of Africa to the next. But all they do is just grazing and eating grass. All the other animals know this, and they wait for them. The first ones that go after those and say, we got meat coming, they'll be marching pretty soon. Because every time, I don't care what you do to a black person, all they're going to do is march. They've been marching for 150 years and haven't moved an inch. That's why President Obama would say, you black folk quit complaining about my not doing anything for you. I'm not going to do anything for you. Just go out and put on your marching shoes. Black folks should have been insulted by that. He doesn't tell Jews, Arabs, and Asians, Hispanics, and women and gays that. He only tells black folk that because they know that's all blacks want to do is go out and march. Because we don't have the rest of the strategies that are necessary to be competitive, to deal with these problems.
Yes, sir.
And so the wildebeest marches from one side of Africa to the next. And the first ones that go after them, we call them wild dogs of Africa.
Right.
I used to take trade missions in Africa, and I used to put the governors. So I would take the seafood distributions, trade missions, that's everything from Latin America to Venezuela, Colombia, and Africa. And watching the wild dogs will go after the wild wildebeest and try to bring them down. And when the wild dog gets through eating the wildebeest, guess who comes next? The lions. Then the lions will chase the wildebeest until they get fed up and get a big belly full of them. And when they get through with it, the next comes up is the hyenas. The hyenas coming on to finish up the scraps that's left. Then by that time, the wildebeest will make it to the river, smell it, they're going to go across it. And now the alligators are waiting for them in the river. Now all these other groups, they play as a team. They chase the wildebeest down as a team, a pack. They call them packs. Packs of wild dogs, packs of lions. The wildebeest, they play as individuals. They will abandon their youth just to run on their own to be individualistic, just to try to get away. They'll separate themselves, the males from the females. And everybody feeds off of them. And black folk remind me of that. We will run together just to save our individual selves. We don't play as a team. So what are we talking about today? Everything must be based on being a team.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Now, in comparative terms, in 1860, I said, at that time, you only owned 1/2 of 1% of the wealth in the nation. So that was one problem. You couldn't compete. I told you how the two white men had more wealth because whites play as a team. The white woman, for instance, for every dollar that the white woman has to run a household, the black woman has 2 cents. For the black male, for every dollar, he has 5 cents. You cannot compete unless you start today of changing this game. The game is structural. Thank you, man. The game is structural. You are locked into a social construct that was set up by the founding fathers of this country. And we have never focused on it. You cannot win. You cannot win in practice or in theory the way you're going. It can't be done. You can talk about all this superficial stuff if you want to. You're not going to achieve anything. And let me lay this context as I begin to get a little further down. Everything must be done on a vertical order. The first is like a 5-story building.
Right.
The first story in that building is economics. You must always deal with economics first in a 5-story building. Forget all this crap about what I'm going to deal with education. Forget education. The first thing you must deal with is economics. And the second floor is politics. The third floor is court and the police department. The fourth floor is media. And the fifth floor is education. We have been bamboozled, misled, miseducated to always try to jump to the top floor, to the fifth floor, deal with education, and come back down. It won't work. You must always deal with an economic base first. You must build businesses and industry. You build businesses and industry, forget about the second floor, which is politics. You build those businesses and industry until you learn how to acquire wealth and power, economic wealth. Then you take the money from that first floor and you buy every politician on the second floor. And any politician who you cannot buy on the second floor, you rent or lease it. And then you send him up to the third floor. He then goes to the third floor with these instructions. You go to that third floor and you learn how to control the court system. See, the mafia learned this way back in the 1930s. They control every attorney general, every judge in the country, and the police department. You buy and control with your money, you control the court system and the judges. And so, the police. The police are an armed element. They are a faction of the military. They're carrying out instructions that this larger society envisions in their culture. Black folk are an obsolete, abandoned, unnecessary, irritable people. And consequently, you don't have enough power on the first floor to be able to control the second floor and the third floor. And so that's why they keep beating the daylights out of your rear and they pull you off the side of the road. They're not going to pull Jews off the side of the road and beat them. They're not going to pull white women over and beat them, or American Indians or Asians. They're going to go after the weakest, more impoverished, poorest people on earth in the country and whip them, because they know all you're going to do is march. And the worst thing about it is because you haven't learned how to play as a team. You'll go get an entire black community, 70, 80, 90% like Detroit, Michigan was 92%, Ariana was 95%, Richmond, Virginia, St. Louis, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. Guess what you do? And you hire an all-white police force. And then we'll know why they're whipping your rear end with them. You pay their salaries, you give them the clubs, the badges, the guns, and we'll know why they're whipping them. They have no fear of you and no respect for you. They know you can't do anything. You don't control their politics and the people that can do anything in return. And they're going to keep doing it. And common sense will say to you, why would I go to Detroit, Michigan, got a 92% population that's black? Why would almost 47% or 52% of the cops be white in a black city? And then they got a unit called stress. Now, one time I was functioning as assistant police commissioner in the police department in Detroit, going down there. I was also an investigator for the Safe Street and Crime Act. And I was doing that time I was working on riot control, even in Detroit. And I had some 10 general things, going on, even CIA and stuff going on. Why would you hire people that you know are opposed to you that are going to exercise their culture on your rear end? Why? You would never go to an all or majority white city and find an all-black police force.
Yeah.
White folk aren't that silly. But once you learn to get the wealth and power, and people know that you've now got economic power, which is the most powerful thing in this country, the capitalist society, they won't screw around with you on the third floor with the courts and the police department, because now you can hurt them back. Then you take your money off the first floor and you go to the fourth floor. You begin to buy media. You buy print media and electronic media. Now in this country, black folk, out of all the media, print and electronic, of all the cable systems, radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, blacks own collectively 35 thousandths of 1%. Out of 12,000 radio stations, you own about 67. Out of TV station, one time you had one. Out of cable system, you own nothing. Out of daily print newspaper, you own nothing. If you don't own any media, how in the world are you going to organize, communicate, and organize? It can't be done. But our people keep trying to do it. They want to go on the white stations and talk about things about black folk. White folk are homicidal and not suicidal. They're not going to let you come into their station and radio TV and talk about black folk in a positive way. So what they do, they maintain a whole drawer full of people they can call at any moment to counteract anything that you want to do positive for black folk. They got a list of their names. You all might call them conservatives. And some of them even liberals. And I know you might not, we're going to get into this a little later on too. What a conservative is. A conservative comes from the root word to conserve. To conserve means to hold on what you got. Or to say that those who ain't got ain't going to get. That's what a conservative is. And yet every day I look at TV, here's all these from the red states and the blue states, white folks say that I'm a conservative. And no blacks raised in the hell about it. You were put into slavery by conservative whites. And every day you go listen, watch the Face of the Nation, all these talk shows, talk about bragging about the other conservative, and you sit there dead like on logs. You don't raise any cane about it. And you got blacks running around on TV, call every Sunday. They're on the Fox channel, they call themselves conservative. And common sense would say, what in the world has a black person got to conserve? Why would a black person want to be a conservative? What is he trying to conserve? Welfare, food stamps, public housing? What is he trying to conserve? And all a conservative black is just aligned with somebody else's team. And we don't have any teams because I got black folk across America. And when I'm speaking in different countries, I got black folk who are, they're so busy trying to get away from blackness, you know. Even though God assigned them to a skin color team, I can't even get that all. I never want to be a black leader. I always want to be a black manager, a black coach, and coach black folk. And when I call the black team out to the field to practice and rehearse, guess what? Half of them won't even come out to practice and rehearse. Just like right now in this cathedral.
That's right.
Every seat should be packed.
That's right.
Upstairs. They won't come out to rehearse and practice, okay? And when they do come out, they won't play the game right. You throw the ball to one of them, he won't catch it. You run the ball, he'll tackle you instead of the other team. He'll block the other team instead of blocking the other team, he'll block you. You have a huddle to go call the signals for the next play. He'll lead the huddle and go up in the stand with a megaphone and tell everybody up in the stand, here's what they're up to. And that's why in a race-based society, black people have never won a game, have never got any scores on the board. Because we don't play as a team, we refuse to play as a team. Now let me go back and start dealing with get into my speech now. Now racism, you need to understand some of these concepts before I get into economics. Racism is a concept that is a group-based concept. It's an economic group-based concept. Racism never existed on the earth until the 1500s. After Columbus supposedly discovered, in quotes, America in 1492, and went back to Portugal, they started, and they found out that Henry the Navigator, in about 1444, had brought about 16 blacks from Africa and given them to the Pope. And they worked in the Vatican as slaves. So about 1498, 1488, Pope Innocent put out an edict saying, if you want to have slaves and get some free labor, get some blacks. And that was about 4 years before Columbus discovered America. That's right. And so when Columbus came back to Portugal and said, hey, I found all this wealth of land, this rich with resources. And but to develop it, we're going to have some labor. And at that point in time, they changed the whole game. Prior to that time, business was based on what we call mercantilism. That's right. It switched from mercantilism to what we can now call capitalism. Capitalism, so that you'll understand this, because most of my friends, even some very popular national friends I got, personalities, we've had this debate on TV because they don't even understand what capitalism is. They're always anti-capitalism, anti-capitalism. How in the world are you going to be anti-capitalism? You never even practice it. Well, capitalism was against black folk. No, it wasn't. Black folk was capitalism itself. Capitalism means owning and controlling the tools, the land, the resources, and using other people's labor to enrich yourself. That's what capitalism is. Black folk have never owned any resources and land and resources to be able to be a competitive group and to use anybody else's labor. And once that got, so they changed over from mercantilism to capitalism. They said, but now we got all this land in the West that can be developed. When that happened, 9 European nations jumped into it and said, we're going to go develop the Western world. Now Columbus discovered it. And guess what they did? They started a race, R-A-C-E. Right. A race just like any other race. Right. Like a bicycle race, an automobile race, a foot race. It is a contest, people. Right. When I come back to Philadelphia, I want y'all to understand this. I'm coming back. That's right. Racism is a contest. Yeah. It's a group-based contest where groups are competing to own and control resources, tools, and to use other people's labor. That is racism. Racism has nothing in the world to do with how you feel about somebody. It has nothing in the world to do with discrimination. Racism has nothing to do with bias or prejudice. That has nothing in the world to do with racism. But you've been bamboozled and believing that they mean the same thing. When those 9 European nations got into a contest, they began to compete to develop North America, Central America, and South America to get all the riches of it out. They did that for over 300 years. Then by 18th, and at that time, everybody understood that racism was an economic issue, part one, and it was a group-based concept. No individual can be a racist unless he belongs to the group that has the power, economic power, and wealth. I'm going to say that, most of y'all didn't hear me. You cannot be a racist unless you belong to or a member of the group that has all the power and resources to be a racist. I've heard people say to me, when Dr. Anderson, don't you think a Farrakhan is a racist? No, he's not a racist. Farrakhan can't enslave anybody. He can't tell people who didn't marry or he can't marry. He can't dictate to other people, to white folk. You got to be a member of the power, the majority society that controls the wealth and power and resources, even with these politics included, to be a racist. And it's a group phenomenon. People say, Dr. Anderson, since you always take up for black folk, you must be a racist. I said, I would love to be a racist. I wish I did have a lot of power and money to be a racist. But I can't do anything to anybody. Heck, I'd be lucky to be able to get home and if my car had a flat tire. I don't have the money to even call a cab. How can I be a racist? But they say, well, isn't discrimination a right? No. Let me point the difference. Prejudice means you got a preconceived feeling based on previous experiences about something, situation, or event. That's prejudice. You're predetermined and have a predisposition about something. That's prejudice. Discrimination allows you to discriminate. Every human being on the earth must, to live, must discriminate, he must be biased, and he must be prejudiced. That's natural. I love burgundy cherry ice cream. I love those big black cherries in ice cream. When I want to go get some ice cream, guess what? I am prejudiced towards burgundy cherry ice cream. And when I said, I'm going to get some. Now, I get biased. I said, now, who puts out the best burgundy cherry ice cream? I said, I guess that's Baskin Robbins. So I'm biased towards Baskin Robbins.
There you go.
Now, once I get to Baskin Robbins, I walk down the aisle. I look at all these various kinds of ice cream. Chamoco almond, Fruit Loops, whatever it might be. And then what am I doing now? I'm discriminating. To pick what I want.
That's right.
But that has nothing in the world to do with racism. But what has happened now in this social construct I'm going to start talking about in a minute is that the dominant society has tricked black folk and got you to believe that any and everything is racism. Because there's an old rule that says that anything is everybody is nobody. So you can't blame anybody for them because you can't figure out what's going on. They'll turn around and say Hispanic, that's a race. Hispanics are not a race. That's a language group, a culture group. And even recently, in the 1970s, when I was with President Jimmy Carter in the White House, that's when he went through this thing about declaring Hispanics, let them join and become a minority. At that point in time, all through history, Hispanics were classified as whites. 99 7/10. Again, 99 7/10 of every Hispanic in the United States is classified basically as whites. So they're not, but yet they're getting over on you by calling themselves these broad ambiguous terms, which we're going to get into, as being a minority. And black folk go for it. They go for it. Arabs are not a minority. That's a cultural group, language group, and a religious group. But they're classified as a minority. Indians too, Filipinos, Eskimos, they're all into the affirmative action plan now. Why? You see, because I have the dubious honor of being the individual that wrote the first affirmative action plan of any consequence in the entire United States in 1971. I did not write that affirmative action plan for minorities, poor folk, people of color, midgets, humpbacks, lesbians, transsexuals. I wrote it for black folk. But again, all this will become clear to you in a minute. They used those very broad terms and ran a scheme on black folk to neutralize anything going to black folk by broadening it to the point where you couldn't define it anymore. The way you shut something out is always over-define it to where nobody understands what it is anymore.
Right.
And that's what killed affirmative action. Now they even threw in white women as a minority.
Right.
White women are a majority. And they sit up in an affirmative action program getting almost all the benefits.
That's right.
Your black leadership went right along with it. Didn't stop it. None of the black leadership made any issues out of it. That white women are sitting there as a majority, getting the benefits. When white women at that time were holding 47% of all the jobs in America, 52% again of the population, 67% of all the college degrees, 87% of the wealth in the country. And yet they sit up here on an affirmative action plan competing with poor blacks for benefits and affirmative action. No black slaves indicated about it. My people just happy they don't leave. I did a survey in Florida when the desegregation funds came down, and I'm over education for the state of Florida. I asked my 67 counties, how would you all spend these desegregation funds? Because what the whites did up in Washington, D.C., when they were trying to get funds for black folk, a congressman from Virginia and a senator from Louisiana, as a joke, snuck into the bill called Title IX. Title IX then said you got to include things for women. That was put into the law as a joke. And so I asked the people at that time, how are you going to spend the desegregation fund? All 67 counties in the state of Florida, when I asked them, are you going to spend the money on blacks or on women? All 67 counties are going to spend it on Title IX for women. I did a study on affirmative action about 1997 out in Texas on affirmative action, and found out at that time that out of all the money spent in Texas, as an example, that white women got 78% of all the money on affirmative action. Hispanics got 21%, and blacks got 9/10 of one. My people aren't ready. They don't understand the problems. They're busy talking about stuff that is superfluous, majoring in the minors, wheel spinning, non-frictional kind of activities. And while people bamboozle and tell them we're progressing, while we're going backwards. Now let me go back now and start going back to the Constitution where all this stuff started. In the Constitution itself, you got to know this. There are two constitutions in the United States. We got two United States Constitutions. We had the first Constitution that was crafted in 1789. That Constitution was crafted strictly and solely for white people. It wasn't structured for black folk. And I never ceased to hear, or not hear, I should say, black folk always going around talking about, where are my constitutional rights? You don't have any constitutional rights. You were shut out from the get-go. You were classified as property. And if you look at the Constitution, they shut you out intentionally. And when the founding, so-called founding fathers, it wasn't my father, but the founding fathers met right here in Philadelphia to craft the Constitution, they spent 2 days debating how they're going to go about writing a Constitution that would exclude all these slaves, black folk. And they finally said what we would do is never use the word blacks or slaves or Negro in any of our public documents. And what we use instead, we'll come up with a code. We use very broad terms for them that they can't figure out. And we use very specific terms so the white folk know what we're talking about. So when you read the Constitution, it says all the people should have a right to vote. Anytime you see all the people, they're talking about whites. We, the people, in the Constitution, they're talking about whites. When they're talking about blacks, they say things like those in servitude, those bonded, those unhappy souls. And I said, why don't blacks think? Why do you keep petitioning and teaching our kids about something that doesn't exist? That's a myth. And they said, and what we'll always do then is use very broad, ambiguous terms to make sure that slaves never participated. And so that was in 1789, but by the first immigration law came out in 1790, the first thing they did was write the first immigration law. They said, now that we've discovered this country, we're building this country based on this race contest we have to build and own and control the resources, we're going to now invite other people to come over here and neutralize everything down. And so they passed immigration laws that went across Europe, soliciting more Europeans to come to America to get wealth and get rich. Yeah. Only, they said this, the Constitution said this is a white nation, for whites only. A zero quote on blacks lets you come in as a slave. And so, and then once that happens, go back to what I told you was the definition of capitalism. And they said, and that became two things. Come to America as an immigrant and get free land and free labor. That is known, what you all talk about, as the American dream. And I hear every black woman I'm talking about, I want to be a part of America. You are their dream. The American dream was built on free land and free labor. And that's why immigrants was coming to this country. And so you read in the Constitution, it says, everybody has a God, everybody, not black, has a God-given right for liberty. What's the rest of it? What is it? Life. That's right. Life, liberty, in the pursuit of what? No, you're wrong. It was not the pursuit of happiness. It was the pursuit of property. When the final last reading came out, they persuaded Thomas Jefferson to take out property. Because they were talking about blacks were the property. Like the animals and stuff and everything. 5 minutes. That's all I got. Oh, I didn't get a chance to get into my speech yet. Okay, listen now. I got to teach about how to get economics. Okay, well, but anyway, let's see now.
Economics.
Well, let me switch to economics, right? Economics. So what you have to do. If you're gonna economically empower yourselves, here's what you got to do. First thing you got to do is start learning how to play as a team. That's what I was trying to tell you. Play as a team. You play as a team, and if you start playing as a team, the first and second thing you do is build community. You got to build communities. You don't have any communities. You have not one single black community in America. Every group in America has communities but black folk because we integrated. We're the only people that chased down and caught integration. When you come across the country, you'll find Chinatowns, Greek towns, Pole towns, hockey towns, Mexican towns, little Hialeah, little Havanas, little Italys. You'll find everybody's got a town except black folk. And you gotta have what we got are neighborhoods. Because when integration destroyed your communities and gave you neighborhoods in exchange. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. Mm-hmm. A neighborhood is like a bucket with a hole in it. You cannot build wealth unless you have a community where you can play as a team in it. And in a community, you should be able to store your wealth, your power, your businesses, your culture, your history, and your heritage, and your job opportunities for your young people. Not having communities, your children would never get jobs. They got to leave their community and go to somebody else's neighborhood and beg for a job. Right. Because you didn't build the businesses in your own neighborhood where they can walk down the street and get a job.
That's right.
And nobody else is interested in giving you a job. And if you don't build business, then once you do that, you then start practicing what I call group economics. You then spend your money with your own people once you build these communities, these businesses. Make your money bounce at least 8 to 12 times before it leaves your community. Hispanic money bounces 6 to 7 times. White money bounces 8 to 12 times. Arab and Asian money bounces 11 to 12 times. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black folk are trying to live in Philadelphia and every place in this country off of 2% of their money. It can't be done. You cannot survive off of living off of 2% of your money. When I have black folks say, Dr. Anderson, how is it I can go around and I see all these whites and all these big beautiful homes in the suburbs and all these other things and big hotels. I say, how do they do that? Where do they get all the money from? Where does it come from? I say, fool, it's your money.
It's your money out here. Work it.
You got $1 trillion worth of money, and as soon as you get paid, you run straight to another neighborhood and give it to them. Keep only 2% of your money in your own neighborhood. And secondly, in terms of jobs, all whites, Asians, and Arabs, 96 and 97%, they work for their own people in their own neighborhoods and their own businesses. Mm-hmm. Black folk have just got it backwards. 98% of all black folk work in somebody else's neighborhood, someone else's business, or some level of government. And it can't make it that way. Whoever pays your salary owns your soul. You got to learn how to break that and build your own business and industry and hire your own people. I keep telling my civil rights leaders and my elected officials, quit going around trying to create programs to get black folks jobs. Black folk don't need jobs. They need businesses to produce jobs. You need to start teaching black folk how to produce jobs, how to look for jobs. In politics, jump to politics. I got another 2 minutes. Let me jump to politics then. In politics, you got to learn how to play politics the right way. You're not playing politics right. And what first thing you should do is understand the nature of politics. Politics is a process that decides who's going to get what benefits out of life. That's how simple it is. It decides who's going to get what. That came into existence at about 9 years in Europe after capitalism started. Politics started about 9 years later. That's what politics, as you know it now, called quid pro quo, something for something. One hand washes the other. You do something for me, I owe you. Only black folk will put people in office and never hold them accountable. You don't go out and ask a politician, I'm gonna vote for you, but before I ever vote for you, and before I just decide to vote for you, you tell me what you're gonna do for my people, my community, right now. And I'm gonna hold you accountable for it. Get a contract from every politician. I don't care what color he is. Quit just voting for a candidate simply because he's black. Hold him accountable. I did a study in what happens to blacks in politics. In 1960, we only had 103 elected black officials in the United States. I did the same discomfort indicator study in 1990. Why? Because in 1990, the number of black elected officials in the United States had gone up by 9,000%. I looked at the indicators of discomfort: food stamps, welfare, imprisonment, drug abuse, dysfunctional families, joblessness, poor homes. And I did the same study 30 years later. Guess what? Instead of with a 9,000% increase in black elected officials, I want to see what the conditions were for blacks. The conditions didn't improve; they went down. They went worse, backwards. Because there's no connection between putting a black person in office and get benefits if you don't hold them accountable. And what you should do now is every election is say, look, it ain't whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Neither one has ever done anything for black folk. What you gotta do is say, you gotta fall back to, hey, what we're gonna do, if you wanna be the most powerful people in this nation, here's the secret. You're gonna be the most powerful people in this nation. You're gonna be more powerful than the gays, the Asians, the Arabs, the Hispanics, and the Jews. Here's what you do. You pull out of every political party. You let it be known that we don't belong to any political party. Not one. We don't want to be a Republican, we don't want to be a Democrat. And what you do is create your own independent party. Create your own black independent party. And say this, say not only are we going to create a black independent party, we're not even going to run a candidate. We're not going to run a candidate. Well, here's what we'll do. We'll vote as a block. We'll give you 42 million votes for the candidate who promises the most and delivers the black folk regardless of what color he is. It can be pink, chartreuse, or polka dot, I don't care. You just deliver to black folk and we'll put you in office. And we're going to hold you accountable. When you come back in 3 years, you're going to show us that you delivered on those promises. And don't vote for people just because they're blacks. These black folk get in office, they're not going to do a darn thing for you. You hold them accountable and say, we'll pull you out of office. If you can't get to them, you're going to find out who put the money behind and put them in office. And you start boycotting all those businesses that put them in office. You send letters to them, walk into them, and all these people got businesses in your neighborhoods. They're not doing anything for you. You go and start passing out literature and say, if you got a business in a black neighborhood and you're not going to do anything to help us, you got about a month and we're going to close this shack down.
That's right.
We're going to boycott you.
That's right. Come on, man.
I'm going to quit now because they got the finger on it. I can't talk.
So if we have that commitment from you that you will stay, because we do have another panel, and we have some folks from another panel who are here, and we have to respect them.
That's right.
But certainly what Dr. Anderson is saying is very important. So are you going to stay?
We got to stay. We got to stay.
All right, so we have that commitment. So Dr. Anderson can take 15 more minutes.
Come on now.
If you want to, and the way you build your political base is do these three things. Here's how you once you decide you're going to go as an independent party and be the most powerful people in the country. Because if you go as an independent party, every candidate will come courting you.
That's
you don't
right.
have to go out looking for them anymore. That's
right. That's right.
It's just like if you're the prettiest woman in town and you're that fine and good looking and dressed that nice and that well educated, you don't have to chase no man. They're gonna come looking for you.
Yeah.
You make yourself that good looking as black people in this country and say we're not going for anybody unless you put something on the dotted line for black folk. They'll come looking for you. Now once you build your base, here's what you're gonna need. You need three elements to be a powerful political base. The first, and this is how your competitors do it. First thing you must have, the first element, you must have a grassroots group. Get yourself a grassroots group. Now see our ministers here? These ministers can get together and build you a grassroots base just like that. And it's right out in the city of Philadelphia. Get you a grassroots base that you can mobilize and communicate with and move at any time. Now, the conservatives, they keep this. They have some are legal and some are illegal. You might call it Ku Klux Klan, the Tea Party, conservatives, anything. Redneckville, they got it, okay? They got all things. They got a grassroots. They can move at any time and mobilize. Black folk got to have a tangible group of people that they can contact and move and motivate at any time. You got to have a large grassroots across this country, movement. Second thing you must have some kind of a research base. Now in this country we got like about 5,000 think tanks. I started one called the Harvard Institute think tank. You gotta have some think tank that's working around the clock trying to develop strategies, comprehensive strategies, show you how to play and win. Don't play to play to win. And so you gotta have some institutions, black institutions that are using the best brain power we got to develop strategies that give it to the grassroots people to tell them what to do. Now in Washington D.C. we got the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, the American Enterprise Institute. They develop all these very comprehensive strategies to keep black folk in the toilet, so they never get out. They got you nailed to the wall because they use those people. The third thing you gotta have a wealth base. You gotta have a wealth base. You gotta organize, get enough black folk that got some money. All these rappers, all these black athletes and black entertainers are just frivolously throwing away money. You gotta create a pool of money. Why? Because you're gonna need that money. You gotta go that money and tap that money to build businesses. Right now, you can't go to most banks and borrow money. You know why? Because you never got your 40 acres and a mule. You don't have any collateral to put up. And you can't, if most blacks don't have enough money to borrow to start a business. You can start a business by a lot of different ways. One, try to use your own money. Two, use your family money. Or three, what we call so-sos or susus, either way. Where you got your different friends to chip in and put in money. And then you start your businesses. Now when you build these businesses, build them what you call competitive advantages. Look around and examine what black folk major and dominate in. Build businesses at this point in time on four things. One, water business, water, food, medicine, and energy, and the competitive advantages of your people. Now what do I mean by the competitive advantages of your people? Any place where black folk dominate in population and spending pattern, that should be your business. Where you are the major buyer of a product, you should be dominating that. As an example, when I look around and I find out in this country that out of all the black hair care products that black consumers are buying, that Koreans get 85 cents out of every dollar.
That's it, 85 cents out of it.
How in the world can Koreans be controlling black hair care in the country? See, that should be your thing. You don't want got that kind of hair. Why did somebody else take that industry from you?
Come on.
For instance, blacks now like seafood. I went into seafood. Why? Because blacks in America consume, here are the facts. Black folk in America were the largest seafood consumers in America. Black folk ate. We did a national study when I was at the White House. Black folk consume 3 to 4 times more seafood and fish than whites did. Whites are red meat eaters, basically. They like a lot of red meat. They want to eat quail or deer or beef or cow, steak, red meat. Black folk love seafood. So black folk eat 3 to 4 times more seafood than whites, and you spend $9 for every $1 that whites spend. If you go to any seafood restaurant, you're going to find at least 50% of the population will be blacks in there. And so when I set up and I built Waterlands Fisheries, I wanted to set up distributorships all across America. So blacks can set up their own distributorships, their wholesales, and warehousing, and restaurant. I was even trying to hook up with Red Lobster, who Clarence Otis, who was the black president of Red Lobster at the time. Trying to get him by. We spent a lot of time trying to work it out. But then he lost his stockholders and they had sold all 800 of their restaurants for Red Lobsters. But I was trying to provide them with seafood. I want blacks across America very soon. And I'm going to depend on these ministers to be able to help these blacks set up some seafood distributorships around here, or warehouses, or restaurants, and I would ship the seafood to them. And they set up and run these restaurants in this city for black folk. And you get that money. Another competitive advantage beside seafood, for instance, and this is not necessarily good, but black folk were drinking about 43% of all the Scotch liquor. But you don't produce one drop of Scotch liquor. Black people spend up buying something like about 41% of all the theater tickets, don't own any theaters. Now what does this mean in the long run is that you got to learn to dominate in your own communities, playing as a team in those things where you have competitive advantages.
Right.
And that's why I see, and you can't depend on these other groups. Asians aren't going to buy from you. You can forget that. They have a code of conduct. They buy from their own people first. Black folk got to learn to buy from their own people first. And it ain't about racism. And don't remember this. Do not go out hating anybody. I don't want you to hate the whites and the Asians.
Right,
and
right,
it's not
right.
about hating.
That's right.
It's learning how to play the game and win. Learn how to play. That's what I call it. Practice social economic judo. That's a Polynomics term. Where you flip the switch on everybody. And learn how to practice and make money that way. And sell your products to your own people any way you can do it. And lastly, for instance, let me jump to one other thing back to that politics. I told you there was two constitutions in the United States. The first was in 1789. The second one came out of the Civil War. Now the second one was supposed to give black folks some rights. Why? Because the first constitution was affirmative action. The United States Constitution is an affirmative action plan for whites. Y'all listen to what I'm telling you. It guarantees that they're going to get first divvies and privileges on everything. Now the second constitution came out in the 1860s, and so they corrected some of that. But guess what happened? Whether it was the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, or the Civil Rights Law of 1865, the Civil Rights Law of 1866, the United States Supreme Court jumped in. And on everything that pertained to black folk, the guardians of the status quo, the guardians of racism in America is the United States Supreme Court. They're not going to let you distribute anything to black folk. That's why they redefined, they outlawed, they ruled everything that was going to help black folk as being unconstitutional. And what they use as a scheme is saying, well, the Constitution is colorblind. The Constitution was never colorblind. The Constitution is always very color specific. And see, and what the Congress is doing, the United States Supreme Court is doing, it doesn't have the authority to do. The United States Supreme Court never had the authority to tell the Congress or the president, you can't do anything for black folk because you can't use race to do anything for black folk. That's a lie, because Congress can enact laws. Obama can put out things for right now for black folk, and nobody should be able to stop it. Why? Because you see, what happened, the Supreme Court does not have the authority. What they did, they fabricated authority to intervene, started back in 1803 on what they call the Madison and Marlboro decision. When they got involved in a case, they said, well, we're going to challenge the Supreme Court. And they got away with it. Everybody knew they didn't have authority to do it. They didn't bother them. That was in 1803. But in 1857, when the Dred Scott decision came up, now the Supreme Court jumped in and said, let's do what we did in 1803, but now let's do it in 1860. I guess all these things coming out for black folk. It's our responsibility to maintain the status quo. And so the Supreme Court then countered everything that the Congress did. The United States Supreme Court has authority to do three things. One, to go after and oversee any federal official who fails to do his duty, to perform. Two, to get involved in ambassadorial appointments. Or three, to be able to rule in some of the lower court's decision. That's it. They have no authority to overrule Congress. And so all those things that were set aside for black folk, the Supreme Court shut them down. And if you were to go to what we call the Slaughterhouse case in 1872, where the Slaughterhouse case says that the 14th Amendment, again, was only written for black folk. The Equal Protection Clause in America only written for black folk. It wasn't written for immigrants. It wasn't written for women and gays and midgets and humpbacks and peg legs and everybody else. It's written for black folk. And the Supreme Court has told you that over and over. They did it again in the Saunders case in about 1879. Again, saying that those laws were put in effect only for black folk. And now that's why white folk are upset about affirmative action now. Because you got all these people in there that shouldn't be in there in the first place. And if I was a white male, I would be upset. I said, how in the world are you going to put Filipinos in there? How are you going to put Eskimos in the affirmative action program? Who ever enslaved? When did an Eskimo ever pick cotton? He hadn't picked any cotton. Why is he in the affirmative action programs? But they get away with it because black folk don't raise any hell about it, making the issues over it. You have to start raising and say, no, black folk are exceptional. And stop letting people tell you this. that they go around, particularly with our young people, they love to get in front of young people and say, well, we all got to understand that as minorities and poor folk and people of color, that we all are equal. No, you're not. You are, as I said initially, you are an exception. You're different from any and everybody else in this country. You're different from everybody else, and you got to act like you're different and carry yourself that manner. It is an insult to injury for anybody to say and pretend that somehow that all people in this country have equally contributed to the development of this nation. You have not. And that's where, once you start understanding the things I'm talking about exception, you are a very special people, you're exceptional people. You got to take what you got and build on it. Don't be against anybody else, but you start looking out for your own self first. And I'll tell you again, as a pilot, if we're flying over 13,000 feet or 35,000, we lose cabin pressure, a mask, an oxygen mask will fall down from the panel over your head. When an oxygen mask falls down because we lost cabin pressure, I want you to put that mask on yourself first. Don't be like black folk and get up and say, are there any midgets, the lesbians, the humpbacks back there need a mask? Anybody need a mask? Sit down, fool, and put the mask on yourself first.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that for a long time. Yes.
All right, so
I've been waiting for that for a long time.
is that a pretty good presentation?
Good is not the word. Excellent.
So, sometimes when people have a wealth of knowledge, it takes a little bit extra time to get it all out. We appreciate the contributions. I'm Sharif Street. I'm the Council of Black Clergy and will serve as moderator for the remaining two portions of this presentation. And we're going to, even though we're past the time our president said, given the enormous response we've gotten from Dr. Anderson, we're going to take a few questions, and I'm going to ask for someone from the audience to come up and ask a question, and then depending on the amount of time it takes in the discourse, that will determine how many questions we take. But we are going to at least take some questions. So can I have my first?
I have sons that want to go into business. They're 27, 35, and one of them's 30. They've been trying to have a bad record from selling drugs some years ago. They were in their teens at that time. Their records is bad. They can't get jobs or anything. But they're really willing to, they done made business cards up, they done made flyers, they do little scrap irons. They don't want to live that kind of life. They got background from, they finished school and everything. They want to go into business, but the money's not there. And they want to expand the business. And they need somebody to talk to that knows what they're doing, that's into authority. I have not been able to reach anybody, and I've been trying for a long time, anybody that can help them, just guide them through something, to make them get these, make it able for them to open up a business of their own. They can do it because I did it. I used to do puppeteering. I took flyers and put them on people's cars in the supermarkets. I took flyers and sent to people I didn't even know, companies. I did 600 shows in 9.5 years. Live musical puppetry. I had a puppet house made and made cake for children, seniors, and schools and libraries. And that was a business I started myself. And I need somebody to help me with, but I can't do this, what they want to do. It's something else different they want to do.
So,
and I need help. My sons need help. They're dying for help.
I heard a couple portions here. Some of this has to do with things that about background checks and expungement that we're going to do in our next segment with respect to criminal justice, which as soon as we conclude this part. But there was a question, I think, in there about a young person who's faced some of the challenges. She said her sons have faced some of the challenges that are indicia of many young people in our community. What advice would you give them about starting a business?
For a young person? That's going to be a little difficult for me to tell you about a young person doing it. for a lot of different reasons. First of all, from the experiences and also the lack of capital. And you need to know what capital is. You can't have, see, you go to a bank, you start a business, you got to have capital. But what is capital? Capital is nothing but surplus wealth that you have. And what is wealth? Wealth is the fruit of your labor. And so if black folk right now don't have any wealth or any businesses to create the wealth, but see, then you can't start a business unless everybody pools their money, like Susu's. Like I know one Arab friend I got, and another two Arab friends, matter of fact. What they do, for instance, they come together in some kind of a setting, call all their friends. They find out how much money is necessary. But before they do that, they first identify places for them to live. Arabs would come in this country, Asians, they pick a neighborhood to live in. That's the first thing they do. They're going to live together and form a community. Secondly, if they're going to go in business, they pick the neighborhood where the business would be best suited. In most cases, they're going to put it in a black neighborhood because there's no business in the black neighborhood. Then once they do that, they bring the individual in and say, you want to go into a business, what do you want to go into? They recommend a business for the young people, like a gas station. But then every Arab chips in so much money into that buy. And that's the first thing, they chip in the money. And secondly, after they chip in the money, every Arab is chipping in the money, then promises that they would come by there and buy from them, buy the gas from them, and service it. The same thing should be going on with black folk. I mean, if you're going to put a black person, child into business, you got to really help put up the capital. You got to get some people that are players that will come out and buy his product to keep him in business and service his business. And thirdly, you have to teach them how to be accountable and responsible for running that business. And let me jump off of that. Let me go to another situation, even better, maybe a better example. Asians, for instance, I used to go into the Asian communities in Japan, China. What they used to do to start off, get all their kids in business, they would start off early. Unlike black folk who would send their kids off to school and let them major in anything. They go off and major in football, basketball, tennis, and golf, or anything. But the Asian, what they do, they say, you're going to go off, when you leave home, you must go to college. You go to that college, you must get straight A's if you can. You go and get ready. Go in there and get straight A's. For the 4 years that you're there, come out excelling in all areas of your studies. That is a rule. Secondly, they say then when you get to the second step, you must now pick a business you're going to go into because you got the general skill base. You get into that general skill into that second industry, you pick an industry and you go in and take a job in that industry and learn one aspect of that job. You learn it, but you don't stay in that job going in about a year and a half to 2 years at most. And after you put in about a year and a half in a certain industry or business you're going to work in, then you quit. And you go to another similar business, but you take a different job in that business. If the first time you're working as a clerk in that business, the next time you're going to work in the production line or something. So you learn it. You just work there for a year and a half to 2 years at most. And then the rule in Asia at that time was that by the 5th year, you should be able to quit now, come out of the business, and go start your own business and be ready to take a risk. And see, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. We should be teaching our children to not go out and look for jobs, but to build jobs. But you got to be supportive of them. You got to have build the capital. You got to make sure you got the skill, that knowledge base behind them. You got to direct them into a specific industry. Don't let them wish-wash and go back and forth and waste their time on the college campus just having a good time. Have them pick an industry they're going to go into. And then when they leave there, the last thing, don't let them go out into the general market. They have to go back to their home, back to their own community, and demonstrate those skills and competencies. And what we don't do that. Our kids go out and get a good education, and you never see them again. They leave and never go back home. That's called a brain drain. You're training your kids to go out on a brain drain and take care of other people's businesses. When I used to talk to Sybil Moffitt, for instance, down at Florida University, when I was one of the universities underneath me. And she would say, well, Dr. Anderson, we got the best business school in the country. I said, what do you mean you got the best business school in the country? She said, well, we got graduates from Florida University. They're working for Xerox, Clorox, Anheuser-Busch, blah, 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 blah. I said, what are you teaching? He said, we teach business administration. I said, there's your problem. Why are you teaching black folk business administration? Why don't you teach them business and industrial development? So they can go out and learn how to build some business and build industries. Why are you teaching them to go out to take care of other people's businesses? And so our people don't understand the need. And the same thing with black kids. Black kids should not be learning the same thing right now at the search first level as white kids. You cannot teach black kids come to school with a different set of emotional, financial baggage than white kids do. You got to be prepared to deal with that. I had one teacher in Tampa, Florida one time when I came up and I was on the stage. She said, Dr. Anderson, I want you to know this is doing integration. She said, I treat all my kids alike. I said, you should be fired. And I'm going back to my office and get you fired. You don't treat black kids like you treat white kids. Those black kids come to school with different problems than a white child comes. You need to rewrite all the curriculums in all these schools. Rewrite all the curriculum in those schools. And rewrite those curriculums based on what those children's needs are. Those black kids need things. Black people are the only people on earth that's never enjoyed the fruits of an industrial revolution. How can you be teaching them business administration? They never been through business and industrial development. Teach them some skills that are different from what the white kids they don't have in the businesses. And teach them how to start businesses. You should have special classes for them. And secondly, make sure that they never graduate from school without having a skill in their hand or a scheme in their head. Make sure they learn trade skills before they ever graduate from high school. Don't let them just walk off and say, I'm going to college. I don't need more black kids going to college. Half of them can't find jobs once they get out of college.
Yeah.
I got all these immigrants taking out. I call Sears all of them immigrants taking out all the jobs, the trade skills jobs. Teach our kids some trade skills to have these jobs.
Right. So, we appreciate that enthusiasm. A number of people who have interest in hearing about the criminal justice. So we are going to take 2 more questions, and then we'll have to move to criminal justice. And at the end, if we have some general time for questions, maybe we'll take some general questions. But I saw Ms. Benita was next in line, so we'll take her question, and then we'll probably take the one more question over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benita Cummings, and I am an elected committee woman in Philadelphia, and I am the daughter of the late Reverend Dr. Leah Cummings Sr. I just first wanted to just quickly, if you'll indulge me quickly, the Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen expressed deep concerns in a speech Friday about growing inequality in the United States. Citing data compiled by the Fed, she outlined the accelerating divide in incomes and wealth. And basically, I just wanted to ask Dr. Anderson if he would help the president of our black clergy to get in front of the billion-dollar federal heist in housing that is taking place here in Philadelphia, along with the land bank bill, which also is a part of African wealth, with our land being transferred into a bank that we will not ever get any compensation for. So if the clergy, and particularly our president, can get in front of this, we will possibly be able to prevent the greatest poverty that God's creation, in God's creation. So we're about to create the greatest poverty here in Philadelphia, and everybody's watching us. So if they get away with the $1 billion of housing dollars that is coming down to Philadelphia from that federal Obama administration over the next 2 years, no blacks are getting any jobs, no contractors. Your young daughters are not getting an opportunity to be architects and engineers. That's the soft cost dollars that go into housing development before you even get to the construction. So tricks are being played, and the clergy has to demand from the political apparatus that this $1 billion heist not take place here in Philadelphia.
This comment she sort of had 2 things she asked Dr. Anderson to comment on. One was the creation of the land bank in Philadelphia, where there will be significant amount of assets, which she said could be in the billions, and I don't have a real estimate on that. But there's going to be a significant amount of land, transferred to land bank, which will be governmentally controlled. And 2, her comment was, in Philadelphia, we have, and that is a historical fact, we've had African Americans not participate in the massive amounts of government programming, and she specifically talked about the housing dollars that come to pass. I think she wanted to comment on those 2 facts.
In my Powernomics book, I recommended that most of the major churches across America should set up land banks where black folk begin to lose their land. The churches should have some kind of organization to purchase that land and hold it for them and put it in a land bank to make sure it never leaves their hand, leave black folks' hands. That's one thing. Secondly, I think that I would have my clergy to get more strongly involved in having groups started raising cane with your elected officials here in Washington, D.C., your congressmen. And I asked them, why aren't they right now raising cane and holding hearings on what happened to all the money out of the black freedmen banks that were wiped out and all the money was stolen?
Right.
You got the government was behind that. The government appointed those individuals to run those banks, and they stole $35 million from those poor blacks in less than 5 years. Took it from them, and the government has never been held responsible for that. That's money you should be going after, try to put that into your land banks, along with so they have some funds for this. Ask this young lady's question over here. Thirdly, I want you all to start raising cane around the country and all around Philadelphia with your black congressmen about why aren't they right now supporting the Harvest Institute lawsuit against the federal government about the 1866 Indian Treaty. Right now the government owes billions and billions and billions of dollars to black folk in this country for the 1866 Indian Treaty. And black folk don't even know about the treaty. The treaty stipulated that white blacks don't know that Indians held in proportional terms as many slaves as whites did. They were the last ones to turn their slaves loose. And they didn't turn those loose in 1866, 2 years after the war had ended. And black folk right now should be supporting having their politicians come out publicly and go on the radios and demanding that the government now respond to the 1866 Indian Treaty. That treaty says that black freemen and black Indians must be treated in all manners similar to so-called white Indians. And that's in all manners. That means that those blacks go to get 150 acres of free land. It's going to get $160 when they return free, because the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians, for instance, were holding 12,000 and 15,000 black slaves 2 years after the Civil War ended, still holding them as slaves. And the government went on those reservations and made all the so-called 5 civilized tribes had to sign those treaties. The Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians had to sign those treaties to turn all their black slaves loose. Also the Indians fought with the South to maintain slavery. But now those Indians and the government owes black folk. They owe them 150 acres of land, $160 in money. The black folks, these black freemen and the descendants of those black freemen and black Indians should have access to any reservation, those resources on the reservation. They should be tax exempt, not paying taxes. They should be getting free college educations, and they should be able to go out and start their own gambling casinos just like these white Indians can. But black folk are slow up here, and they're not thinking about these things, don't follow up on them. The church, the clergy right now can play a major role in setting up some kind of petition and make sure that every politician go back and try to get those monies and start holding hearings on the freedmen banks. All the money was stolen from those black freedmen.
That's right.
And also on the 1866 civilized tribes Indian treaties. That you're talking about billions of dollars that black folk are entitled to, but nobody raises issues over it. I got lawsuits right now in the federal claims court, the appellate court, the Supreme Court, and the Sixth Circuit Court, trying to get resources for black folk just like your land banks.
All right, now we're going to, this brother here, the Put Me to Work shirt is going to have our final question of this segment that we're going to, I'm going to introduce the folks from the criminal justice panel, and then we will have more questions. So brother, your question.
Good evening. My name is Robert Dyson from the Justice Center. Just a person who has a couple questions. You already answered one, and I like what you said. We have to get, our churches hold the biggest group of people in our neighborhood. We have so many auxiliaries and ministries in the church. Why can't we have, from getting my hair cut, I came on the radio, I heard about this. I heard it once before, but this is something that needs to be done. And this is the only way that we're going to get it done. We got the biggest group of people here. I don't know how many ministers here, but it needs to start. I don't say it needs to start, but it should start with them, because you got ministries, you got money that's going into funds to help other people, whatever. That money could be helping us also. So we need somebody to take the helm and say, all right, well, I'm going to start up here. I'm going to take the helm, and we bring somebody else down here and somebody else down here with one leader. We only need one leader. There's so many different, I'm thinking and I believe that there's so many different organizations that hear a sermon, and the sermon is talking about what we should do. And we have the people right here that's sitting in here, and Iman and Triumph and any other big church and we're not doing the thing to help the people right around the corner from us.
You're right on target. As a matter of fact, I think chapter 8 in Power Economics deals with that issue.
It deals with that. That's right.
See, I'm back to inappropriate behavior. We're the only group on earth that's never used our religion to enrich our own people. That's the fact of the matter. Every other groups, I don't care whether they're Arabs, Catholics, Protestant, but they always use their religion to enrich their people. We should be doing the same thing. And when you do that, in the United States, we got approximately about 65,000 black churches, maybe 122,000 black ministers that pull about $56 or $57 billion out of black folks' pockets every year. And then they put it into a white bank. But if they were to start their own saving loans and some other lending institutions and pool their money together, they begin to buy up this land, for one thing, and hold the land banks. And secondly, they should start teaching economics. They should start preaching economics from the pulpit, from the nursery schools all the way up to every Sunday. And that's what the Bible's talking about when it says that I want to, what's this thing about enrichment in the Bible? The black God, when God said go out and be fruitful and multiply, he wasn't talking about just having babies. He was talking about going out and own and control resources. Okay? And what's going to make the difference in Philadelphia for the rest of your lives, what I'm telling you today, when I'm gone, you can forget about me. But remember this, for you to survive and be competitive and have a better quality of life in Philadelphia and the rest of America, is what you own and control. It has nothing in the world to do with civil rights. It has nothing in the world to do with social integration. Those things are taking you backwards. Those groups now have given up. Ronald Reagan said this in 1982. He said it to Haldeman in his office. He said, use very broad, ambiguous terms like multicultural, diversity, minorities. And they said that the jigs, they say nigs, the jigs would never know that they'll never be included in those groups and you can maintain the status quo. That is a quote. Okay? You all look out for yourselves. Take your churches and have it all you organized. Have one pastor responsible for it. Pool your money every Sunday. Put a certain part of the money up. Start teaching your young people in the church how to start businesses. Teach them how to play as a team. Teach them how to buy from each other. Teach them how to circulate the money around and around again and dominate and come back together. Quit trying to scatter and integrate. Come back together and live together and love and appreciate and protect your own people.
Moving towards the criminal justice segment. But before we do that, I've been asked to bring up the young lady as a brief announcement, and then we're going to move to our criminal justice segment. Then we will take more questions, so perhaps we can get some of the other questions. And since that'll be the final segment, we can probably have a more protracted question period, but it's unfair to our other presenters that we don't. Right. Yeah, and Dr. Anderson will still be here for questions.